This meeting is being recorded.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jen Hicks. I'm the Director of Communications and Outreach. I'm also the editor of the Maine Woodland Owners newsletter in Maine Woodlands. And today we're presenting a really, I think, one of our more important programs focused on new woodland ownership. Um, and we're calling it the 10 important things new woodland owners should know. And when we describe new woodland owners, we talk about people not necessarily new to owning woods, but maybe new to actually actively managing woods. So there may be folks here watching and participating that have owned woods or families own woods for multiple generations, but maybe you're new to actually actively managing it. So this is a program for a lot of people, and it's great to see the numbers that are here today. And we are recording, so this is also going to be watched by many others that aren't here right now. Maine Woodland Owners, just in case you're new to us, we are a membership organization. We're based in Augusta, although we provide, we are a statewide organization, and our mission is to provide support and expertise to Maine's small woodland owners. And that's people who, families and individuals who own between 10 to 1,000 or a couple thousand acres of woods, and do it mostly because they just love owning woods. A lot of you are generating revenue, but a lot of you are also owning woods to enjoy wildlife and to know that you're providing a real service to the state by maintaining and stewarding some of the most important places in our, in this area. And we thank you. So if you're not and being a member means you get a monthly newsletter, a 20-page, basically magazine, and also access to resources such as this, and also a place you can say, all right, is a voice, serving as a voice for us. We are active in the legislature. We ensure that Maine woodland owner voices are heard in the legislature, and we help push for policy that benefit landowners. And we do a lot of great programs in the field as well. So, but these online programs are very helpful. It makes it easy to get information out to a broad audience. So I would love to hear from anybody after this program about more things you would like to see us present. We do at least 50 programs a year. We also have a land trust, so we have property that people can use for recreation, for hunting. We keep it open to the public, and it's also a learning lab. We do our own woodland management, so we learn from experience of managing and the challenges and the benefits of owning woods. And we have a board of directors where five, I believe, Jeff, are licensed foresters. So we have some really deep expertise in that way. And speaking of board members, Jeff Williams, our presenter today, is he's actually been a longtime board member. He's a consulting forester, self-employed down in York County. And he does actually work with a lot of new woodland owners. And I've tapped him before to present this information because he is offering, he does a lot of this type of information sharing with his clients. And so today's program is going to basically be what he talks to his clients about when they're first getting into woodland management. So we're very happy to have Jeff here doing this. Getting him out of the woods, especially in the winter, is a challenge. So I'm very grateful that he was able to make time today. And the way today will work is he's got a bunch of slides he wants to present and some things to discuss, but there will be time for questions and clarifications throughout the program, throughout the presentation. So you can either send them through chat, or you can put your digital hand up by if you mouse at the bottom of your screen, you'll see if you click on more, and I believe that's where you'll find your digital hand. Or you can just put your hand up in the screen and I'll look around for you, and you can unmute and ask your question. So lots of different ways to do that. And then also Jeff's email address is on his screen, and so you can email him at any point as well if you need some follow-up from this program. So without any further ado, I'm going to pass the mic, this virtual mic, over to Jeff and let him start his program. So thanks again,
All right.
Jeff.
Hi, everybody. My name's Jeff Williams, and I am located down in Leamington, Maine. Been a board member for Maine Woodland Owners for maybe a decade, a little over a decade, and a consulting forester for more than that. Today, we are going to go over the 10 most important things new woodland owners should know. And this is interactive, so feel free to ask questions if we touch on something you want a little bit more information on. It's going to go somewhat fast because there's a lot to cover and a lot of information. So again, feel free to interrupt me as we go. I'm going to share my screen here. Start a PowerPoint. So 10 most important things.
Jeff, Jeff, I'm going to interrupt you a second. Nathan,
Yeah.
looks like Nathan's got his hand up, so I wanted to.
Yeah, go ahead, Nathan.
Yeah, just wanted to ask a quick question before you started. How much of this can we get in, like, in a file? Like, are you going to share stuff, or should we be taking active notes as you're talking to try to capture the points and stuff?
This will be all recorded, and you can reference it in the. Again, we can also send out a follow-up email with some of the links in the video if you'd like.
Maybe even your slideshow with that. If
Yeah,
that makes sense.
happily.
Yeah, we can have that available on along with the recording.
Great,
For
thank
sure.
you.
I should also say, and I didn't mention this, we do have a page on our website called New Woodland Owners, and there's other videos from programs, and there's also some documents and links as well. So I will share that with everybody at the end of this program if Jeff hasn't already. So that was a great question. I really appreciate that.
The first slide is the more or less the PDF we're going to go over. This was put out by Maine Woodland Owners, and is kind of a bullet point of these topics. So the first one, know where your land is. It sounds obvious, but I meet a lot of landowners who are semi-confident of their boundaries. They know most of their corners. They might not know a few. It's kind of some confusion around where everything may lie. So some things to look at when you first buy land or you first really get out in the woods, look for your boundary lines. This includes blazes and paint, evidence of old barbed wire, maybe some cheap fence, stone walls, plow lines, and over mature trees are really common ones on boundaries. So in the picture I have, it's the red is the boundary of a Maine Woodland Owners parcel down in Standish. And then up in the right corner is survey pin. And then another survey marker below that, painted red, which is a large piece of pipe. And then another unique one I've found is a granite monument just below that. And that one is marked with an old company name. It turned out to be a wool company that had the property for raising sheep a long time ago. And then lower right is some boundary blazes where two owners couldn't agree on a color. They're both orange and red, which is common. I always tell people to use red if you're reblazing boundary lines and painting. And just buy any old Rust-Oleum red is fine. You don't have to buy fancy boundary paint. And then the one to the left of that is an old plow line. It's a little difficult to see in the picture because it's kind of small, but it's a hump that ran linear in the forest to an old granite monument. And this is where two agricultural fields were plowed, and you end up with a hump where those fields were split. So common boundary evidence to look for when you're out in the woods. And then corner markers. As I said, survey pins, metal pipes, sometimes old axles. I found that buried in the ground, granite monuments, stone piles, and drill holes. And there's a picture on the left side of a drill hole in an old fieldstone. Those ones are hard to find sometimes. You have to be pretty careful when you're looking. Sometimes you have to peel off old moss or leaves or duff on the stone walls to find those. So those can be tricky. Another thing you can use online is the main GeoLibrary parcel viewer application. And this shows all of the tax map data for the entire state, whatever towns are available. So if you want to start there, we can include a link for this application. But if you just Google main GeoLibrary parcel viewer, it'll pull you right up to that application, and then you can search the state for your property. And tax maps are a great place to start. They're often incorrect, but they'll give you a general idea of what your property should look like if you don't know. And this parcel viewer also has aerial imagery data, so you can change the base map to topo or aerial, so you can see maybe some old cut lines or different things to show you where your boundary might be. Getting into mapping tools. A common one people use on iPhones and tablets is OnX Hunt on the left. And this app pulls that same data from the main geo parcel viewer. So you're starting with tax map data. It's a handy one if you're willing to pay for the subscription. It's about $30 a year, I think. And the boundaries are okay on it. I've found they'll get you in the area. If you're standing on a boundary line according to that program, most of the time you should see some evidence with 100 yards of where you're at. The other handy thing about OnX Hunt is it uses the actual tax map data. So if you click on a parcel, you'll be able to see the ownership, name, and the size of the parcel. So you can find out who your neighbors are through that app as well. But it shows you as a blue dot in reference to the map. So that one's pretty handy. The one I use most commonly is Avenza Maps. You may have heard of this before. It's a PDF map viewer that is using georeferenced PDF maps. And a lot of foresters nowadays are producing maps for clients in forest management plans that are PDF referenced or georeferenced, excuse me, where you can upload that map of your property into this application, and it'll show you as a blue dot in reference to where you are on your property in that map. This is a map I produced for a landowner up in West Paris, and it shows it's a project map. So I find Avenza to be really handy in this scenario where you have a bunch of polygons of recommended projects on the ground. And this map allows them to go out and walk through those polygons and know where those end or where they begin. And we'll talk a little bit more about this when it comes to recommended projects and some programs that provide cost share funding for those. So for example, this one we have the upper right corner is a purple polygon. It shows an area of pre-commercial thinning that's been recommended. It's a stand of young hardwood saplings, probably about 2 inches in diameter overall. And the project is the landowner is going to go out and thin those with a little guidance. So they'll know as they work through that polygon where they've been. In Avenza, you can track your area. So if you turn on your tracking, it'll show you where you're walking. So you can cover an area and know that you've done the whole thing, or you can walk your trails and document your trails as you walk and have them logged on a map. The other thing that Avenza lets you do is measure area. So as you are working, you can mark out blocks and know how much you've done, which I find to be a pretty helpful tool. So Avenza, I think, is the most useful. It does require base map data if you don't have PDF maps produced by a professional.
Jeff,
that does
I'm
cost
going
money.
to jump
Go
in.
ahead.
This is a perfect segue. We are offering an Avenza training in March up in Ellsworth. We're working with the Maine Forest Service. Again, I can talk more about that, but just so people don't get too concerned about there's
Sure.
a way you got to learn on your own. We're trying to provide training around these types of tools.
It's pretty intuitive if you upload or download it and just work through the interface. It's pretty user-friendly, I find. So the next piece here is know what is on your woodland. This is an interesting lot I worked on out in Porter. And the picture shows a common hiking destination. It's called Devil's Den. Bill, you have a question?
Yeah, hi Jeff. Thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
But on the mapping thing, our forester who prepared our forest plan
Mm-hmm.
suggested that we pay for a survey around the land boundaries.
Sure.
And then in talking to our neighbors, we found that some of the property lines in the area had been surveyed and then resurveyed, and the two surveys didn't agree.
Yeah.
Of course, the people that paid for the new surveys said, "Oh, that means the old one was bad." I'm not sure why they think that. Anyway, I guess the point is that we're a little uncomfortable forking out thousands of dollars for a survey that we wouldn't have any confidence in. So we walked the land using what was the software this on?
Gaia and Acres.
Gaia and Acres, and found some of the corner markers, which according to some of our neighbors may or may not be accurate. And at this point, we've sort of settled on, we made some perimeter trails around the property as best we could. Where we did find boundary markers, they were always within actually a few feet. I think you said you said 50 yards or something, but we were within a few feet in every case
Sure.
where we found boundary markers, including fences that might be on boundaries as well. So I guess at this point, we've sort of decided that there's not much point in getting a survey done. If we were going to do a pretty big cut, we might get a survey done, or we might just go talk to neighbors and tell them what we're doing and see if they have any objections to where we think the boundaries are. What suggestions do you have in that situation, or anyone else?
Believe it or not, I've run into this more frequently than you might expect. And surveyors disagreeing with each other does happen. And I think it comes down to how far back in the deed research that surveyor went. You'll find more expensive surveys will do the research back to point of origin. And that often is your best bet, but that can get costly. So often you'll find multiple corner markers in one area where you'll have different license numbers for surveyors. And I think if you can agree with your neighbors and you're comfortable with that, I think that's a great option. It's obviously the cheapest option. But as time progresses, you may find new neighbors don't agree with you, or the land gets sold and changes use. And you might find in time that a survey is the right option for you. And I am always a proponent of having a really good survey when it comes to harvesting. I think if you're uncertain about your boundaries, legally you have to stay off them. If you don't know where they are, it's kind of arbitrary, but 200 feet. So if you're a little uncertain, I'd encourage you to leave a pretty good buffer along that area of the property line if you do any work on that line. Yeah, Kate.
I would just say that we are in the very last stages of getting our property surveying and getting it registry at the Cumberland County Registry of Deeds. And this property has been in our family for a very long time. And we've always thought of it as 80 acres, but then when it was surveyed, it was actually found to be 93. And that was even taking a chunk of it out. So even though this property was in our family, I've walked it, I've lived in it for a long time, getting a survey, it was expensive. I mean, for us, it was $16,000. And, but now I know, and I know that he went back to the point of origin. It has given me so much clarity and comfort to have had that. But that's just we're right at the last second. It's been a great experience. I walked the boundaries with him, with our surveyor, and just moving forward and trying to make good decisions. It's a really good baseline.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's great advice.
Yeah.
I think obviously too, having a survey that goes back in time as far as you can, as far as deed research goes, will be strong in terms of any boundary disputes you might have. So an example of where you have two different disagreeing corner pins, if you have a really good survey, obviously yours will likely be the one that is correct.
Yeah.
How many acres was that, Kate, that you surveyed?
Well, we thought we were surveying 80, but it ended up being probably like 97. And then 4 of that was not ours. So it ended up being a 93 acre
Okay, yeah,
parcel.
sorry, you said that. That's right. Okay, thank you. Thank
I
you.
think, and in my experience, I think Kate's, thank you for sharing the cost of that, because I think that's often shrouded in secrecy in some cases.
Yeah,
And I
gotta
think
keep
from
money.
my experience, that's actually a pretty fair price for that size of property to go back to the beginning. I've heard of estimates over 30 grand for a few, 100 to 200 acres. So it's a huge investment. But if your land is staying with your family long term, I think it's a wise one. And obviously, it becomes part of your legacy planning long term to be able to hand that down to your family. So again, knowing where your land is, that's really important. And then knowing what's on it as you spend time on the property, start to understand what you like about it, understand what's out there, where the trails are located, make notes of things you like, things you see. I included this picture in this one because this landowner owns that really popular hiking destination, but they don't have a trail to it. So the trail is on a land trust land that leads up to this point, but they own, 20 feet back from that cliff, which is kind of an interesting situation. And then the bottom corner of the screen is a white oak that grew through an old tire. I thought that was something interesting about on a property as I was doing the management plan. I don't know if that was on purpose or if a old trucker just tossed a tire out and it happened. But, interesting things like that around the property, I think are worth documenting over time. They're fun to do. All right. Another interesting thing that is a tool that's available to landowners is the main LiDAR viewer. And I include this with the history portion. So know the history of your land or discover the history of your land. And this one, I know for those that aren't on video, this may not be helpful for you, but I'll describe it. This one shows topography of the land with shaded reliefs. And you can see old roads. So there's an old road leading from the southwest to the northeast on this property. You can also see stone walls. So even if your land is forested, it helps to show the history of the land, and you can really understand how the land was used in agricultural times. And I'm a big nerd for this kind of stuff. I really enjoy finding old cattle runs, understanding birthing pastures, small paddocks where they had maybe a mother and a smaller offspring livestock. And it also will oftentimes show you where the best soils on your property are because old farmers knew what they were doing. And that land will likely be the most productive when it comes to growing forests. So again, if you just Google main LiDAR viewer, you'll be able to find this information pretty easily and search your property out. Unfortunately, the zoom on this is about as close as you can zoom in. So you have to have a keen eye when it comes to looking at the property. So if you only own 10 acres, it may not be that helpful. But I would think anything over 50, you should be able to really get a sense of old cellar holes or stone walls. So I like this one. It's a helpful tool. And again, history. I think the history of the land is really helpful in a lot of cases. Knowing who's owned it, how it was used in the past is going to lead you to where you are today. It's going to help you explain the forest type that's there. And this is a fun one I ran into out in Porter on that same land with the hiking area. They have a piece of property that used to be part of a town with a lot of houses, which has since been gone back to forest. And I reached out to the local historical society for information on the land. And they gave me the document showing that there was an old schoolhouse located on the property. And the drawing of the schoolhouse had what they called Skull Rock next to it. And so I was able to then go out, walk the property. There's no cellar hole because it was a school. It was just set on top of pieces of granite. But we were able to find that Skull Rock, which is shown in the picture below it. So then you know where that location is. And you can kind of protect that area or document it as a special place on the property. So again, local historical societies will have a lot of really good information. Maine Historic Preservation Commission, they'll provide full reviews on your property if you send them an email, even just a screenshot with a tax map or something showing where your property is, and say, hey, what do you have for information? They'll show you what they have for old maps and maybe some old cellar holes or home locations on that property. And then as you spend time out in the woods, I think this is an important one for new owners. Understand what you have in terms of forests for aesthetics and what you like. What you have may not be what you like. A lot of new owners are able to get into land ownership because the property may have been liquidated or heavily harvested. So there's no value in timber on that land. And the upper right-hand corner is an example of that. This was a clear-cut area. And now it's really good habitat. It's what we call early successional forests, which are a niche habitat type for a lot of songbirds and other things like New England cottontail. And it may not be what you like for a forest in terms of looks. It's often hard to move through. There's typically a lot of ticks in this type of habitat. But understanding what you like and maybe what you're working towards aesthetically is important. The left-hand side of the screen, I included this because I think it's a pretty profound picture. Above is a pine stand with a lot of hardwood mixed in between and a lot of lower value trees and some really damaged trees. And we did a white pine shelterwood establishment harvest on that. And the picture below that is the result of that harvest. And it's mostly just white pine because that's what the landowner really wanted to grow. They wanted to regenerate two age stands with some young saplings, a mix of young saplings, and then the pine partial overstory. So I think that's an interesting one to think about as you are in your forest. Think about what you like about it, how you like the looks of it, how a harvest or recommendations from a forester might change that. Another really great resource for finding out more information about your land is the IF&W review. And oftentimes these are included in forest management plans. But you can provide your property boundaries to Maine IF&W and get a review for rare plants, threatened or endangered species, certain types of rare natural communities, and other information. I think this is a great tool for landowners to know what you have on your property, but also in the context of the landscape. I think oftentimes we think just inside our boundaries and that's it. That's all we need to think about. But thinking about what you have that might be unique in the landscape and how you can improve that, or thinking about what's nearby that's unique and what you can do to supplement or improve that habitat type or that plant species that may develop on your property but isn't there now. Yeah, Bill, go ahead.
You mentioned sending an email to Maine Historic Preservation Commission, I think it was.
Yep.
Just go to their website, grab their email, and send them a note.
There should be a contact info on their website, and just sending a general inquiry to that email will get you a pretty good response.
All right, and that's a free service?
Sure is.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you.
They're a little slow. They have a lot going on, and sometimes the turnaround can be a month. Same with the IF&W review. Sometimes it's a little bit slow to get a response, but
okay.
A lot of times forest management there's not a real rush in these things. So there's time to wait for those documents. But this one I have on screen is a property I worked on in Porter. It abuts a Maine Woodland owners land trust piece. And I included this because there's a lot of interesting information. There's a deer wintering area. There is a unique natural community, and there are some rare plants. So as you move into actually taking action and maybe doing some management activities, this is imperative to know, because you don't want to disturb those rare plants or maybe change the species composition of a rare community so that it's detrimental. And again, free service. And I should put a plug in for Joe Roy, who did this review for me. He is a great wildlife biologist, and I think he's out of Gray, but he is also somebody who will come out to your property and meet with you and walk around and talk about what you have and how you can improve it. And if you're managing for wildlife habitat, give Joe a call. we can include his email.
And we have him lead programs, and he's got colleagues who also work with
Yeah.
landowners as well. So I'm going to say this too, as Jeff is providing all these terrific resources. Our website and our office and Jeff, we will make sure you get all these different links and resources and how to get to these maps. So don't worry about not knowing exactly all the different places. That's what we're here for.
Susan asked the question, how do you obtain the IF&W review for your land? There is an email address you can send your property to. They like to have maps if possible. So even again, just screenshotting that parcel viewer or your tax map and circling your property. And we can provide that email. I think it's info@mainifnw.gov, but I'll have Jen provide it at the end of this. And you just send it off and say you'd like a review of the property for forest planning purposes. And they will send you what you see here along with some additional information. All right, so again, going over other things that are helpful. So objectives and goals. And this is one a lot of landowners come to foresters with kind of some loose ideas, some general ideas. And that's okay. I think having a direction, whether it's broad or specific, is great. So some general common objectives are just general forest health, improving overall wildlife habitat, maintaining or improving water quality, recreation. So a little picture of my dog enjoying a romp through the snow this winter. And then some more specific goals I find are common are trails, access, establishing new trails. A lot of people manage for hunting. They're deer hunters, and they like to improve the habitat to promote deer population on their properties. Some are more focused on invasive plants or the ecosystem and trying to create a more healthy ecosystem on their property and more native plants and reducing invasive exotic plants. Or some people manage for individual species. So my favorite bird is scarlet tanager. And knowing that bird likes semi-mature oak hardwood stands, would be helpful to manage for that. So again, having some real good goals or objectives to be able to write down and have specific to work towards is real helpful. Constance, can you repeat the message of how to obtain IF&W review? Sure. So Maine IF&W, if you search out their website, they should have a contact info email on there. And just sending an email to them. Any email you can find from Maine IF&W stating where your property is, or again, including a map if you can in that email, and just letting them know you'd like a wildlife review for forest management planning purposes. And they'll direct you in the right direction. Help you get that. Thank you, Nathan. Nathan has included the link. So moving on, keep all records and documents. I think this is another important one. Often the plans I produce for landowners, I put them in 3-ring binders so that there's a place to put all that stuff. Keep copies of your deeds, any contracts you've had on the property, or anything you received from the previous owner is really important to keep. Tax documents, old management plans, past tree growth applications. If your property is enrolled in the current use program, tree growth, having those old applications is helpful because oftentimes they have maps with the property, or of the property, excuse me. Old survey maps and timber sale documents are also helpful, even if it wasn't you that had the timber sale. So here I have a picture of some deed research I did for a client. There's a right-of-way deed. And had they had this earlier, they would have known that they had a really good right-of-way into their property. But we had to dig to find this to be able to use that right-of-way. It took some time. Tree growth application there shown in the lower corner, and then a survey of one of the main woodland owners' land trust properties now. And then again, the lower right-hand corner is a forest operations notification posting number. So if there's been a harvest on your property in the past, that number will have some information tied to it of who cut it and who the previous owner was. So those documents are really important. If you don't have your deed or you don't know where it is, you can search it out on the Registry of Deeds. I think all landowners should have a copy of that, whether it's a quitclaim or a warranty. Oftentimes they have really good descriptions of the property in terms of where the boundaries are and the meets and bounds of those. This one, I think, this is a fun one. I think everyone that owns forest land ought to know the species types, at least of the trees. When it comes to shrubs, I give people a pass. There's a lot of different woody shrubs, and especially ferns. But the Forest Trees of Maine is a publication that was put out, I believe, by a number of groups, but Maine Forest Service had a big part of it. And you can find it online as a PDF document for free, or you can purchase a hard copy. And I believe Maine Woodland Owners has those. Jen, correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I included a couple page screenshots from this document of some common tree types. Eastern white pine in the upper left-hand corner. And they have really good pictures showing the foliage type, the cone or flowering structure of each tree. So if you don't have a copy of this, I would get one and spend some time in your woodlot looking for the common species types. A fun one on the right-hand side, red maple and sugar maple, knowing the difference between those, where the red has the serrated leaf and the sugar has more of the rounded edges in the lobes of the leaf. It also shows bark type, bud size, bud type. So I encourage everybody to either save the PDF copy or download a copy, or purchase a copy. And then learn about forest professionals. Know who's out there, what resources are available to you. We've shared a lot today, but there are more. Maine Forest Service, everyone has a district forester. So know who your district forester is. Don't be scared to reach out to them. Tell them you want a walk and talk on your property. They'll come out and walk with you and help provide some information. Susan says, workshops on tree ID and invasive plants have been very helpful. Awesome. That's great. I think those two are very important to know. Also, consulting foresters, people like myself are professionals who will help you. Many consulting foresters will come out free of charge and just walk around with you, talk about what they see, and where you can go to start the planning process. Included technical service providers. We'll get into it in just a few minutes here, but Natural Resources Conservation Service, NRCS, requires foresters to be of a certain level to be a technical service provider through their program. As we mentioned, wildlife biologists. I included certified master loggers, but knowing professional harvesting companies is helpful. Well-established land trusts often hold events on their properties, walk and talks with different professionals. Forest rangers, maybe not so important unless you have a timber trespass issue, but they are worth knowing who the forest ranger is in your district. And they can be a helpful resource, as well as game wardens. And Maine has a landowner relations game warden who will help you with any type of recreational problem you have. So if you have people putting up tree stands and game cameras unlabeled, or people knocking down gated access, stuff like that, there is a game warden who will help you with that specifically. So talking about forest planning, there are two different programs in the state for what they call cost share funding for forest management planning and project implementation. Natural Resources Conservation Service is the big one. They are funded through the Farm Bill and have what they call the EQIP program, Environmental Quality Incentives Program. And they will fund a forest management plan. And in that plan, a forester will help you lay out recommended projects, either ones that you're interested in or maybe ones that the forester has recommended in the plan for you. And common projects include forest stand improvement, like crop tree release. I have a picture there on the right, upper right hand of a crop tree release project in a pine stand we did many years ago. They have funding for habitat projects, like creating early successional habitat. If that's something you're interested in, they'll fund that by the acre. Invasive plant control, they fund that, whether it be mechanical removal of invasive plants or using chemical herbicide to treat those plants. Forest trail repair is common, where you have erosion of trails. They can fund repairs of that trails and putting in cross drainage or water bars. Access control is also another common one, putting up gates to keep people from dumping garbage on landings or unwanted ATV use. The pictures on the bottom there are old stream crossing on a property I work on. The old culvert just kind of hanging out in the stream. Everything else is washed away. And then on the right side is a bridge project that was implemented on the Standish property of Maine Woodland owners. And this was funded through NRCS with putting in concrete abutments and then steel girders for the bridge and concrete decking, which is a little unique and more common these days than using hemlock decking because it lasts longer. Woodswise is the next one. Woodswise has been around for a while. Also the RAP program through Maine Forest Service. But the Forest Service has a new program that they're releasing this year, and it's called the Resilience Program, Forest Resilience Program. And this program is focused on implementing projects. So if you're somebody who has some direction already, or you have some ideas of what you want to do in your forest, whether it be pre-commercial thinning, early commercial thinning, crop tree release, maybe you want to do some planting or invasive plant control, they have quite a bit of money actually through the state to be able to put together a project plan and then implement those projects. Applications for this program open March 16th. And I think the figure I heard, the state has $9.5 million. And this is a 3-year program, and they're hoping to spend all of that money on forest landowners like yourself. I will say between the NRCS and the Maine Forest Service, the reimbursement rates do vary. Maine Forest Service is funding at what they consider 60%. So if you're implementing that project for $1,000, they'll reimburse you for $600, and you'll be on the hook for the remaining 40% of that project. So you have to be committed to want to get this stuff done in the Maine Forest Service program. But again, it's a great program. It's a rolling enrollment. So if you enroll for a project plan, you'll hear within a few weeks to a month, and then be ready to go. Whereas the Natural Resources NRCS program is through the federal government, and the wheels turn a bit slower. Oftentimes you'll sign up for a plan and you don't receive funding for maybe 6 months to a year. And then the forest plan, you have a year to get it done, and then the following 3 to 5 years, you're implementing projects. So that one is a bit slower. But they're both great programs. They both have good funding and lots of different projects to put in. One thing, I just wanted to throw this in real
Jeff,
quick.
It looks like Bill Streever has a question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bill.
Sorry, me again, Jeff. For landowners that are doing all the work themselves, like pre-commercial thinning and that sort of thing, those reimbursement programs probably are not applicable. Is that true?
They are. No, they are. And I encourage people to do it themselves. I have a fair number of landowners that like to implement this stuff themselves. The Maine Forest Service one, you just have to show a cost. So there has to be a cost. You have to either charge yourself or kind of figure that out. If your land is a family trust or something like that, you can write an invoice to the trust or however you want to organize that. But NRCS doesn't care. They're funding on a per unit basis. So if you have, let's say $5,000 to do crop tree release or a pre-commercial thinning on that property, as long as it's all done, you receive all of that funding without having to show any kind of cost to you. And for that reason, I tend to lean more towards that program in terms of doing the work yourself. They have really good funding rates too. But that program, you'll have to have a licensed forester help lay it out for you. So with the pre-commercial thinning, you'd need a little bit of guidance from a forester, and then you'd be on your way to do that yourself. And I think that's a great way to get out and be active in your woodlot, whether it be crop tree or pruning or any kind of project like that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So I included harvest systems in this. I wasn't going to, but I threw it in last minute because there's often a lot of questions around this stuff. When it comes time to implement a harvest on the property, what are the systems available? I'm just going to touch on these real quick. Horse logging is one, not very common, not utilized much anymore because of the value of wood, and mainly low-grade wood has dropped considerably. So you won't see that very often. There are a few guys still doing it as a hobby across the state. Cable skidders are becoming less frequent also. This was common before there was a biomass industry, where the tree is felled as a pole, it's limbed at the stump, it's topped at the stump, and it's put on a cable choker behind a cable skidder and dragged out as a pole. That still happens quite a bit around the state. It's a little bit slow, and it's great for small lots with high value wood. Whole tree mechanized. This is a really common one that you'll probably see most often, and it utilizes feller buncher, tracked feller buncher, shown in the upper left-hand corner there. Grapple skidders, which drag the tree out whole. That's why it's called whole tree. The trees are felled and put in a bunch, whole, dragged out, top and all, and then at the landing site, they are delimbed and the tops are chopped off. The tops are chipped and the limbs are piled up and brought back into the forest, often put in the trails and run over in the trails to break down. But this equipment is large. It requires a large landing. All the products are brought out at once and sorted on the landing site, so you need some room to move around. But this is a real common one, and people like this harvest system because you end up with a lot less slash in the forest. It's great for utilizing the land for recreation afterwards. And then the last one to touch on real quick is the cut-to-length system. And this is used more, I would say, up north in Maine, but it is used across the state. It's not as popular with private owners because the limbs and the tops of the trees are used in the trail. So the tree is cut with that machine in the top left called a harvester processor. It's delimbed right at the stump and the top is cut off right at the stump. And oftentimes that brush is built into the trail so that the soil disturbance is cut down for those larger machines. I don't mind it so much. The benefit of this system is that the wood is picked up and put on a forwarder, so there's no skidding. There's minimal soil disturbance. The bottom right-hand picture shows a forwarder. Everything is cut to 16 foot often or less. And so when you lay out a trail system for cut-to-length harvest, they can be any which way you want them to be. So often landowners will come and say, "Oh, I want a loop trail around my property. Can we create that with a commercial harvest?" And in a typical whole tree mechanized harvesting system, if you look at aerial imagery, you'll see they're like a fishbone style trail layout. So oftentimes you can't get that done. But with a cut-to-length system, you can have the harvest machines go any direction because there's very little length to the wood. So those are the more common harvest systems. Cut-to-length and whole tree mechanized are most common. Keep a written record of all activities. This is a real important one, whether it be your forest management plan or even just doing pre-commercial thinning. If you have a plan already, jot it down on a piece of paper, tuck it in, write the year that you did it, what your purpose was, what the goal was, just so you have some documentation of that. I think that's critical. A lot of people were really hot to trot to prune pine back in the 80s and 90s. If you didn't keep a record of it, you might not have received the benefit when you went to sell those trees because there's no record that you pruned them when they were 6 inches, and all the wood that's grown up to a 20-inch diameter tree is clear wood. So having those records is helpful. I included a copy of a mill slip here just because a lot of people may not have seen this kind of thing. So on the right side of the screen, you have a mill slip from Robbins Lumber. This would have been a load of white pine. So if you ever do have a harvest, this is something you'll receive if you have a good forester and a good harvester, showing every single log, shows the length of the log, the diameter, the gross board footage, the net board footage. So something you'll want to keep a record of if you have a harvest is all these mill slips. Know the financial value of your land and your wood. This is a big one because markets do change, and as you own your property, you want to know that you have some potential income there. And it's grown less common in the recent past, but I think a lot of people used to manage for increased income over time. And I always tell landowners, with good management, if you're improving forest health, oftentimes you are increasing the value of that forest with forest products that are going to be better quality. So I included a couple tables of things I'll put in management plans. On the left there, you see a summary of the total stumpage, which is the value of all the timber on the property, converted into whatever that product is. And this is a helpful figure to have when it comes to taxes over time. So if you can have this developed early on in your ownership, it's worth doing. And this is something that would be provided in one of those natural resources conservation service plans. So again, showing volume of logs, cordwood, and then a table of practices, maybe some recommended projects and what the cost would be without financial assistance, and then what maybe the government might provide in the difference. And also another useful document, the Forest Service puts out stumpage prices by county or what they call units. They've combined some counties. So every year they put it out, but it's a little bit late. 2024 is the most recent, but they'll show you stumpage prices by product on average of what's been reported in that county. And I find those to be somewhat useful to landowners if you don't really know where to start of what your wood should be worth. So again, I have another document here. This is from a harvester I contract with, showing a summary of a payment, just showing how much wood was sold by the unit, what the product was, the price per unit, and then the total. This is a common thing you'll receive from a harvest. And then I threw in a Form T. And I know we're getting into the weeds a little bit on this, but a Form T is developing a cost basis for your land. So if you're a long-term owner, you plan to be in it for the long haul, you're going to create a trust, or you're going to give your land to your kids. Establishing a cost basis is a very important task, knowing what the land is worth. If there's a house on that land, separating the value of that house and separating the value of the timber, and having a good inventory of your forest in terms of timber will help you establish what you have and what your growth will be, and being able to work through depletion over time to reduce your cost basis. When it comes time to cut some wood, your tax liability will be much lower than it should be for the federal government and the state. So start slow, don't get overwhelmed. Do just a little bit at a time. I think a lot of people get into ownership of forests and really just don't know which direction to turn because there's so much information, there's so much to digest, and then they just don't do anything. And it's 20 years down the road and they wish they'd done something. So don't get overwhelmed, start slow, and don't be afraid to ask questions. I threw this example in because it's kind of a fun one. We did a harvest up in Poland for a landowner, and they were a Maine Woodland Owners member. And they just came out and said, hey, can you guys put in my signs? I see you have an excavator here. Do you mind popping my True Farm sign and my new Maine Woodland Owners member sign in while you're here? You got the equipment, and we were happy to do it for them. So don't be afraid to ask questions of professionals. Don't feel like you're asking too much of somebody. They'll let you know. And that is the most important things, I think, for new woodland owners. So feel free to ask any questions if you have any.
Thanks, Jeff. I just want to say, we're hitting about 1 now, but I would imagine, Jeff, you'll hang around for as long as people have questions and people
Sure.
stick around and ask the questions. Looks like Bill's got his hand up.
Again, sorry. So my understanding is that to get the tax break, basically the property tax break, we have a forest plan, and that forest plan requires some form of eventual harvest. And I suspect
That's the tree growth program.
That's the tree growth program, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
I suspect that there's a lot of owners like us that are not looking forward to a harvest. We, on our land from the last harvest that was about 20 years ago, there's still significant damage in the form of
Sure.
spitter ruts and that kind of thing. I'm
It's important.
wondering, is there anything we can do? Like, how can we still be within the requirements of the Woodwise program, but avoid damaging our land with conventional harvest techniques?
It's important to know that if you own land or buy land in tree growth or enroll land in tree growth, at some point you will have to harvest some commercial products off that land to be within the state statute. There is a defined list of commercial products, and that can include seeds, cones, maple syrup. So it doesn't necessarily have to be roundwood saw logs. Oftentimes people just immediately go to, it's going to be saw logs. You can cut firewood and sell firewood, but oftentimes foresters will just generally say, that you need a harvest. And to that point, I think if you have a good forester who knows what your objectives are and everybody communicates well and the forester picks the right logger for the job, you should have a harvest that should improve the look of the forest. And you should be happy with the outcome. It should be what you desired from the get-go. So I don't want people to be nervous to harvest. I think with proper planning and a good forester, you should have an outcome that you'll be happy with. But like I said, go ahead, Bill.
That's great. Where can we find that defined list of commercial products?
It's right in the statute, but there is a PDF online from Maine Forest Service. I think that shows what some of those products are. But
Yeah, it is. There's a publication. I'm going to also interrupt that again. I'm going to promote our website. We have a new Woodland owner page with a lot of links. We have a owner resource page with a lot of links. I saw links in the chat. I'm going to make sure I'm going to make sure I have all those links that people have been sharing on these websites. So I'd like our website to serve as a good central point for a lot of these resources that Jeff was talking about today. So the website is mainwoodlandowners.org /new owner. But you can just go to mainwoodlandowners.org. You'll see new Woodland owners as one of the tabs at the top, and just click on that. And that's where we want to make that a go-to for all these types of resources.
It does include.
Yeah, if you don't see things, ask questions. I'll get them up there.
It does include Christmas trees too. So if you're commercially selling Christmas trees, I've had clients who didn't enroll their Christmas tree land because they didn't realize it. And also boughs, if you're tipping boughs for creating and selling wreaths, that's a forest product as well.
But the key is one of the keys that you do have to sell it. You can't, for example, harvest firewood for your own use. That doesn't.
The purpose of the program is to promote the forest industry. So yeah, there has to be a commercial sale of some forest product, and that has to be your primary objective. With tree growth, you can have a lot of secondary objectives like recreation or wildlife, things like that, but primarily you have to be following the recommendation of whatever the commercial forest product is that you're trying to produce.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Could be anything. Doesn't have to be related to today's program either. If you just got a oddball one you want to toss out, something you've experienced. Go ahead, Kate.
I haven't heard of certified family forest before. What is that?
That is part of the tree farm program. And it's a third-party audit. Essentially, it's a point of pride more than anything in Maine. A lot of people historically had enrolled in tree farm because there was a benefit. Their wood could be certified and sold when mills were tight. You could have your wood sold ahead of somebody who wasn't certified. But now it's more just a point of pride, showing that you're a good steward, you're doing the right thing. People like to put the sign up and have their family name to show off their land. And I encourage people to do so. I think it's a great kind of a heritage program more than anything.
And so, because this is what we'll be wondering, because our property in our family has been in tree growth for many years, and the next time we need a new forest management plan is in 2032. I'm not excited about harvesting, and I know that we'll probably be able to do firewood and get some of the punky beech out, and that's kind of our plan for now because I don't know any better. But I'm wondering if we shift over to open space, shift over to land trust, do something that's ecologically enhances at least a big chunk of what we've got. But for Bill to know, he probably does, about the huge fee that is extended to the owner if they pull out of tree growth. And so we have to find out, my family, if we just shift over to open space, can we get that same tax reduction? Those types of questions.
Yeah, true. So there's 3 current use programs in Maine. There's agricultural land, which doesn't apply here. Open space is the second one, and then tree growth. If you absolutely do not want to harvest your land and you buy land in tree growth, you can move it to open space at no cost to you. You don't have to have a professional licensed forester or anybody involved. Open space, I think I have the numbers right, but it's 30% off your normal tax rate just for general open space being enrolled in that program. If you don't post your land and allow public access, you get an additional 20%.
Wow.
And that's not advertised. So you don't have to tell the town that. You don't have to say, hey, our land is open for public use. You just can't post it. You get an additional 10% if you do have an active forest management plan. So if you continue to have a forester write a plan for you, which I think I would encourage you to do so, you get an additional 10%. And then there's more. So there's a forever wild category. So if you have your land, if you have a conservation easement or something like that, you get additional.
Yeah.
But it's pretty easy just to get the general 30%. And if you don't post your land, get additional 20.
So this forever wild, how should we approach that option?
That one's a hard one. I haven't been involved in anything that's forever wild. That's typically a land that is enrolled in a conservation easement with somebody holding the development rights of that land. And oftentimes you aren't allowed to do much in forever wild land. I think even they may limit what you can do when it comes to trail building and stuff like that. I'm not the person to ask those questions to. I don't know much about that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Nathan.
Hi. First of all, thanks for putting this together. Everyone involved, it's been great. I wanted to ask a little bit of a selfish question. I grew up in central Maine, but most of my woodland stuff was cutting firewood to heat our house when I was a kid. At this point, I'm serving as the personal rep of my mom's estate. So I'm dealing with a bunch of properties. One's the family home that's on a tree growth lot of around 100 acres, and an adjoining piece, which is not in tree growth, of around 50 acres. So aside from joining Maine woodland owners, I'm trying to learn everything I can about what to do. For my case, is there anything specific that you might recommend that maybe wouldn't apply to just anybody who's owned a piece of land for a long time, or what's a newbie gaining responsibility for this? What else should I be doing or looking at or reading? Or
do you plan? You're planning to keep the land and manage it?
Yeah, the tree growth property. We've had it in that status for quite some time. I've been involved just from the standpoint of getting a forester, getting the plan put together. We had an original one a long time ago, and then we've done, I think, a couple of addendums or follow-up plans, but not redone it from scratch. So it's probably going to be due for that, to redo the entire plan. The main thing that's happened on the property was a big windstorm came through a few years ago and knocked down a whole bunch of big pines and different stuff like that. So we're dealing with a lot of mess from that and cleaning that up. But I'm just looking for what should I be doing? And in particular, I would love the property to sort of maintain itself in the
Yep.
form of, financially paying property taxes and upkeep and things like that. With some hands-on work, I don't mind, running a chainsaw and the tractor and different stuff, but probably going to need professional help here and there. So like I said, I'm just getting up to speed or trying to, and just looking for what extra things might make sense for me.
I think my recommendation for you would be to seek out the cost share plans through Natural Resources Conservation Service. So find out where your local field office is. They're split up by county. And they will provide funding that should cover probably close to 80% of the cost for a real comprehensive plan on the land. Tree growth plans are limited. I will say that the state doesn't require a lot of information in those. They're kind of general overviews of the forest and what's recommended. Whereas Natural Resources Conservation Service requires a lot of detail and a lot of guidance for projects, and they supply funding for those projects. And in your example, you'd be a great candidate for that, to be able to go out and do some work and get paid to do some work on the weekends on your own property.
Okay.
But also it's a great estate tool because it gives you all the information you need to know going forward. And every 10 years in that program, you can reapply and have a whole new plan written up at very little cost to you.
And so in particular, that would apply to the 100 acres that are in tree growth. Is there something similar I should be doing for the 50 that are next door that
I'd include it all. Regardless of the tree growth status, the NRCS will fund a plan whether your land's in tree growth or not.
Okay, great.
That forest plan covers tree growth. So you can have a Natural Resources Conservation Service plan written, and it certifies your tree growth check mark with the town. So you're good to go. And like I said, if you can get funding through that program, every 10 years, you can update your tree growth with a brand new plan. But yeah, I would include all the land, any forested land in the planning process.
Well, Mom didn't like to really cut down anything, so I'm trying to honor her wishes, but also, the place has to be maintained. So
sure. There's a balance. There's a fine balance to be had with that.
Well, I appreciate the info. Thanks so much.
Sure. Bill, do you have another question?
Yeah, just going back to your comments about the open land plan versus the tree growth plans. It's two questions. One, I think you said if you're buying land, you can switch it from tree growth to open land.
You can switch at any time.
You can switch it at any time. Okay, that was the first question. And the second one was, you mentioned the various levels of tax break that you get for open land. I have no idea how that compares to the tree growth tax break. Do you?
Tree growth is a lot more. So I don't have a percentage off the top of my hand. It's based on your mill rate in your town. But tree growth reduces your taxes much more than open space. So if you go into open space, you're going to be paying a higher tax rate.
Okay. All right. Many thanks.
Yeah, but there's no requirements of open space. Once you're in, you're good to go. You don't have to renew it. It's there until you decide to take it out or not.
Would you be able to make a general statement about how often people that are in tree growth are actually doing harvests?
Yes. I think it's a state enforced program, and it relies on private consultants like myself to write the plans and make the recommendations. And my rule of thumb is, if I write a plan for somebody in 10 years, I say, consider some activity. These are the recommendations. If they just do nothing, I'll talk to them and say, hey, what's the reason? Where are we at? What have we done? What are you interested in doing? And then at year 20, if they do absolutely nothing again, they're not right for the program. So I think at some point you have to have some commercial activity on the property, obviously because of the program. But forest plans should be somewhat malleable documents. They shouldn't say you have to cut at 2027 in August, harvest must commence. There's always leeway for weather, for markets, for changes in ownership or family, disturbances. So I will say that I think if you're interested in maintaining your forest, tree growth is the right program. But if you just don't want to do anything, open space is the way to go.
So in our case, we're definitely interested in maintaining the forest and doing some of the thinning, partly as, true pre-commercial thinning and partly for habitat enhancement in some areas. But my biggest worry is I just don't see how anyone's going to get back in there and haul out timber without just trashing the place. I mean, from what I saw, the 20-year-old trails are a mess still after 20 years.
Yeah, that probably is poor planning and a bad contractor. Probably harvesting the wrong time of the year, creating rutting. And then again, a harvester that just may not have been considering residual trees or condition of the forest post-harvest.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, that's good news. I need
Yeah,
to-
that's probably, I've seen a lot of bad harvesting. And I'll say this, when you're driving down the road and a good harvest is being done or has been done, you shouldn't really even notice. You should say, that just looks like a really nice forest.
Oh, okay.
Find
Great.
yourself a good forester. The district foresters will be able to recommend somebody who's a professional and has some experience and a good reputation.
Super. Thank you.
You're welcome. Kate, did you have another question?
Well, not really, and it looks like Nathan just got off, but I don't you think a recommendation for him is that for that 50-acre piece that wasn't in tree growth, that it gets in some program because he's paying high taxes on that.
I try not to push people into tree growth unless
Or open space or something. I just wouldn't want to pay taxes on a piece of land that's just sitting there.
if the taxes aren't a burden for the owner, I tell them
Okay.
not to enroll in the program. Yeah,
Okay.
unless they become a financial burden, because the one thing with the tree growth program is oftentimes you'll have different state the state legislature will try and manipulate the program, and you're kind of at their whim. And that's one thing Maine Woodland owners always does is advocate at the state government to say, hey, we don't want changes, or if there are changes, we want beneficial changes to that program. So for that reason, I always say to people, if you can afford your taxes, they're not a burden. Yeah, don't enroll. But
Fair
in
point.
Nathan's case, he probably, if he wants the land to support itself, tree growth is the way.
And he can see himself what his taxes are on that 100-acre piece versus the 50-acre piece.
Yeah, and you can always go to your state.
Too much, I can tell you that.
Yeah. Well,
You
there
can
you are,
always-
Nathan.
You can always go to your local assessor and ask them to do the formula on tree growth and just say, let's assume it's all mixed wood forest. Let me know what my taxes would be if I enrolled all 50 acres. They'll be able to give you the difference.
It's night and day for us.
It's a big difference.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's just huge. It would not be, it wouldn't be reasonable for us.
And that's really the purpose of the program, not only to produce commercial timber, but allow Mainers to hold on to their forested land.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's great. But anyway.
Again,
Thank you.
I just
looked into it. One of the reasons that piece they were purchased as two separate pieces. That one was never in the family. The other piece has been in the family for a long time, and I think my mom's original intent was to buy that for potential development, like maybe put a few house lots to supplement her retirement income and things like that. So that's, I think, why it was left alone. Now that it's all coming under my purview, it might make more sense. I don't really have a lot of desire to develop it or do anything. So tree growth might
It has to be 10 acres or more. And
that's an interesting point, Nathan. When I meet with landowners who are considering tree growth, I often say, just consider worst case scenario. If you ever need to sell land, maybe keep your road frontage out of tree growth. If that's something that's on your radar long term, it's a last ditch effort, you have medical expenses or something. Keep that in mind so you don't pay a penalty.
Yeah, and I heard that this is kind of off topic, but I heard that they've changed recently the amount of road frontage that's needed to put more than one home on a piece of land. So as long as you got enough width to get into the property, you can put like three houses, let's just say, up the same little driveway without having to have extended amount of road frontage and stuff. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have any plans to do anything right away. I'm just trying to get my hands around what is it going to take to manage all this. And my IT career doesn't really help me deal with any of that.
The cost share program is the way to go. Get a plan, little expense to you. It should provide you with some real good direction.
Okay, great.
and satisfy your tree growth requirements. And if you then want to enroll that 50 acres in tree growth, having that plan done will allow you to do so at any point within that 10-year period. Bill, did you have another question?
No, sorry, I forgot to lower my hand.
That's okay. Just
I could
wanted to
go on
make
and on
sure.
I could go on and on with questions. This has been great. Don't waste everybody's time.
Well, thanks everybody for hanging on and sticking through it. I appreciate it. And thanks for being members for those that are.
We'll do this again. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I think so. I'd like to put together one on harvesting. I know there's a lot of apprehension around it, and I'd like to do one virtually to go over some scenarios that I've been involved in the past and some mistakes that have been made, to give you some guidance on that, so you don't end up.
And we have a lot of other programs coming up, and so my follow-up email will include a list of all the other programs that you should look for, and then the links that we talked about today. So thank you everyone for being here. Thanks, Jeff. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye,
so much.
everyone.
Bye.
Good session. Thank you.
Thank you.